have concern with the way in which they've selected players. Nikori, Richie Barnett, pretty much straight up and down. There's no footwork at the line, so there's no variation to how they're going to play. I actually thought Roger would be best suited on the wing for what they had if Chance played his best game. Olakau'atu, who was just so damaging on that right hand side.
Just, he's a beast,
It's ridiculous.
DSPN, the Devlin Sports Podcast Network.
NRL round 1 up and done then. We're looking forward to round 2 kicking off Friday. Warriors against Manly. Joining us to look at all things league, including the 30th anniversary of the Warriors yesterday playing the Brisbane Broncos, is Richie Barnett, the former Kiwi captain, played his professional league in both hemispheres and now back on Sky Sport, as we all know, as an analyst and an after-match contributor as well, which is great to see you back on the tally, and thanks so much for joining us on the show, mate.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Let's look back 30 years yesterday, the Warriors, and that launch at Mount Smart. Unforgettable. 30 years gone just like that, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. It's interesting. My mother-in-law sent a picture of them watching one, I think it was the America's Cup was on.
Yep, it was.
Secondly, the America's Cup was on, and we actually played the Warriors at that time as well during that phase, and she was watching it. So it brought back memories of the introduction to an amazing thing for Kiwi Rugby League with all sports, the hype surrounding it, the ability for people to play in New Zealand and have a genuine pathway to sport. To match the Australians, of course, if you were ever going to play, you had to leave the shores and go over to Australia. So it was just a magnificent platform for the game.
So what did you feel like as a player in Australia at the time? I mean, was that really important to you that, hang on a sec, if this had happened a few years previous, I might have been able to actually play the sport that I love and play it professionally at home? What a big deal that is.
It is a big deal. And, when you look at it, and players before us went over there and paved the way.
Oh, yeah.
But when I look at it, I go, I'm glad I went there, because it's different. When you transition as a young person, you learn to stand on your own 2 feet, living away, and that builds resilience. That makes things harder for yourself. And again, when you succeed, you just see what you had to go through. And not a lot of people see that sort of thing. All they see is what you do in public, not what you do in private. We had no money. Both my wife and I were going over there. We were on big money at the time, but
you probably had another job, did you, Rich? You probably had to work another job.
Oh, geez,
yeah, right.
Heck yeah, I had no car. My wife had to use the car. I was waking up at 4:30 in the morning, getting back at 9:30 at night.
Wow.
Had to work at the club, train twice during the day, and that's life. And I enjoyed it. That's just what you had to do.
Webby says, we'll move on to this game this weekend. He says that don't expect too many changes when the team's announced tonight, and made a specific point yesterday at that press conference of also singling out Luke Metcalf and saying, give this boy time. So are those your thoughts as well, that the team that played and failed, and we can't, paint it anything other than that against the Raiders in Vegas, they've got to be given another chance, not only this weekend, but do you think it's got to be for the next 3 or 4 games, that essentially that 17 has got to stay together?
Yeah, I think we've got to give them. We've got to give them space to actually get through. What we saw in the first game was an absolute demoralisation of what to even lay a platform for anyone to shine. To be honest, so they just got muscled out. They were the grittiness of what Canberra did to the Warriors was second to none. They were just extremely good. They peeled them back over a period of time, and they just really couldn't have. They didn't have any answers. They couldn't fire any shots. Their spine couldn't work and operate. They were a little bit east to west, of course, but that's going to unravel when you're not winning the contest on the ground. So I think we need to give the spine an opportunity to showcase what they're all about. And it comes down to really winning the battle in the forwards, right? I know it's ridiculous. We say that all the time.
Yeah, it's true,
but if you're not muscling up in the middle, if you're not winning that battle, then the outside backs aren't able to shine.
Look, and watching you on the telly afterwards, I mean, you were great. You were so honest about it. I mean, there's nothing really you can't paint it, any other picture than what people are actually seeing, can you? I mean, there's no point trying to rose petal colour this up when we aren't winning the contest. We're stuffed back in our own 20 metre line right at the very start of the game, and it just seemed to be like that for the most of the match. They were offloading at will. Yeah, we had moments, but we just couldn't string anything together.
No. And I've got to say, when when I look at the side, and the concerns for me is that obviously the halves didn't have a baseline list to play off. They're not genuine ball players. They're obviously runners. I look at the side and I have concerns. Like, I have concerns with the way in which they've selected players. And if we look at the side with Nikori, Mitch Barnett, Capewell, Harris, pretty much straight up and down. There's no footwork at the line, so there's no variation to how they're going to play. It's pretty predictable that they're going to, one, get in the face of them and put numbers on them, because we haven't got Fanua Blake. We haven't got Fanua Blake anymore. So the variation how they play, if you look across the board, you've got players who actually can, one, bust the line because of the size. Secondly, the footwork at the line. So we're missing a couple of things that maybe could be to detriment of the side and their selection and what they have on their books at the moment.
But you still think that at the same time that Webby has to go with this same group for now?
Yeah. Yes, I do. I personally believe that they have to stick with it and give them a chance to play on the back foot of some aggressive attack and defence. And then we make a decision on that. And of course, if that doesn't even work, then we've got some real answers and then we start to peel back every considerable thing in the game, right?
Sure.
So if you look at what happened in the weekend, you go, well, it's so boring and predictable, kicking from 40 out. Well, that's the only option they have. Can they kick over the top and try to play some variation?
Yep.
Can they stretch them east to west and then go back in the middle again? I guess that's the adoption of players making a decision at the time to move away what they're currently doing and pivot toward in a game, and that requires people to make decisions on that based on line. And you'd hope that would come from the coaching staff when they identify that this is just not working.
And look, you could ask for a tougher contest this weekend. We could be playing Melbourne, we could be playing Penrith or a rampant Broncos side. But that Manly team that destroyed the Cowboys, and that scoreline probably flattered the Cowboys. I mean, really, those four teams were probably the most impressive, if you agree, over the week, the 2 weekends that we've had. This Manly team looked awesome, I thought.
Yeah, it's a bit of a worry, actually.
It is,
when I look at that side, and I've been planning that for a while, it's a young teams. It really is a young guys game, and I know they always talk about the 50 to 100 game player, which is you start to get some experience, and their worldview changes a bit to how they view the game, and they get more consistent. But when you've got Luke Brooks and Daly Cherry Evans running the show and Tom Trbojevic, when you look at the spine, most of the investment is in the spine. If you look at Melbourne, they've always done that. Mm-hmm. They've hugely invested a lot of money in their spine. They've always have. Manly looks like they're doing that as well, partnered by, Olakau'atu, who is just so damaging on that right hand side.
He's a beast, isn't he?
It's ridiculous what he's doing.
And look, you saw him play for Tonga like that as well, man. Like he's a mountain of a man. He's intimidating, isn't he?
He is. And so then you've got him who carries the ball, busts tackles, provides opportunities, and then on the back end of it, you either got someone like Tom Trbojevic wrapping whipping around and getting the ball in hand, because he takes so much of the defensive on the right-hand side. Defensively, the Warriors on the left have to be, they're going to have to be so strong.
Oh, yeah.
But it's Tom that hovers around the other side, and he provides another threat, which is concerning. Like if he gets the ball in hand and you're one-on-one, he's going to beat you.
Yeah, he's just too strong and too
big. He's going to beat you.
Yeah, too fast.
He's just too big and strong.
Yeah. And look, there's a couple of questions that I'd ask about the Warriors. And your expertise especially, is Roger, where is he best suited? We've tried him in the centres. That I argue with Lachlan about this all the time. He says he can't put him back to fullback because he hasn't played there for a few seasons. I don't think the guy's forgotten how to play fullback. 200 metres on the ground was perhaps the highlight for the team in Vegas. And I just think that with his footwork, is he the answer to give us just a little bit more coming back off the line? Because we don't have those wingers at the moment who can take those hits for the forwards. And so is he the one that can create a little bit of space or just provide something different or just make the defence think again?
Yeah, and I think their back five were pretty, again, pedestrian, except for Roger, who was outstanding. I know Chance had probably not his best game, but that's just one of a very few that you'd ever get that from Chance. He is actually such a good player. and his work rate and his ability to bust through the line and get through the line, quick play the ball. Mate, I never thought that. I actually thought Roger would be best suited on the wing for what they had if Chance played his best game.
Okay, that makes sense.
Because coming off the wing require, just like Tohu does for Penrith, it's a big part of the game. And if you can start the set off with somebody cutting the ball back and getting through the line, then Chance is so close to the ball, he works around. He's very industrious in that aspect. Not to say that Roger isn't, but that's the challenge they've got now. Okay. And I can't really answer that from what I'm seeing currently. But if it does happen that way, then maybe they have to consider. The consideration's always there.
Yeah,
you have to mix as you go along. But I think, in my opinion, I think Chance gets another time with as fullback in this next game, and then you've got Roger who's sitting there just waiting to play.
He's been stubborn.
It's a very interesting conversation.
Yeah, look, and we debated it last year, and we're going to continue to debate it. And also, just finally on the Warriors, the kicking game, and what you're saying about variation. With Tamari Martin out there, we've got, I think, another variation on the kicking. It's that providing left and right options, as well as providing, as you say, distance options, or whether it's grubber kicks, or whether we can go a 40-20. But it's so important these days, isn't it? Like, you see when it actually does happen, and these players, these special players that can actually do it. Or you've got Burton for Canterbury, who can throw these, God, they're almost like an NFL kick spiraling at you, nasty things coming at you. I just wonder whether we're lacking a bit there as well.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of having that variation, because fullbacks and wingers are trained to hit catch balls, obviously all variations to it, but there's nothing like a floater and a spiralling ball that's hovering around. And if they catch the ball for end-on-end kick, they build confidence. What you want to do is really get to that real quick, spiral the ball up and really unsettle the pattern in which they play. And I think that's what they've got to change. And I think the game has changed considerably now when you've got players who are so agile, when you've got Penrith moving the ball and exploiting avenues and not giving you time to settle into one-on-one coming out of the line. They're spreading the ball. They use agility. They use aggression. They use power. The power game, they've got so many things they can work on. That's why they're so hard to beat, just as Manly is, such as the Broncos. Look what they're doing. If we look at the three teams that really shone on the weekend and then mirror what we happened with the Warriors, it's a contrast. The top four is contrastingly different.
Yeah, they and
so different.
And I'm not even, and I'm not, I even add, even though they lost Cronulla to that, because I still think that they actually played pretty well in that game, and I don't think that they'll be. And when you look at that, you got four teams you've mentioned. If you look at the Sharks in there as well, there's only 8 teams, Richie, that go to the finals. That doesn't leave a lot of spots if those teams continue to play the way that they're playing.
There is another level. The top four are another level. We can see that straight away, and that's only the beginning of the first round.
Yeah.
And I add to that, there's a prototype player now that is probably 100 kilos with great footwork, massive motor, and I think that's what Canberra had. Canberra had it right across the field. There's a prototype now that if you can't have footwork and you can't get through it and you're not fit enough to sustain what this game is all about now, then I think we've got to change how they select players for the new generation of players to win games, not to compete, to win games, because that's what we're after.
One thing I've also noticed as well is that rake position now is just so vital, isn't it? And it seems every year that those guys have so much more of an influence on the game. We saw it with the Canberra hooker, you just it's not just the pick and go, but it's like, and Egan 2 years ago was this guy, and he's got to become that guy again, because it's just that momentum that you get, and also the ability to spot gap 5 up. It's all of that forward roll momentum, and you can see what that does throughout a game and turning players around, all of that kind of thing. It's almost like the micro moments that if you miss that micro moment, you miss a real opportunity now. I think that's as important as any part of the game.
Yeah, it is. And Wade is so good at that, Wayne is so good at seeing things and bringing players on and exploiting some opportunities. But if your forwards are not muscling and gritty enough and providing variation, and it's not just one out, it's actually a variation to how you play.
Yeah.
And if he can get that ball, if they can win that battle in that forward, and he can see that, and his recognition's right on tap, I think he is so good at what he does. his craft is great. He just needs that forward power to work it. Whether they've got it or not, we'll see on Friday, because we've got Pasika and bloody Okalaatu and Tokiaho, who's an ex-Warrior, right? With great footwork, big body, big engine. Like, can you imagine what that's going to look like with Big Tobby at the back? So they've got a massive game ahead of them, and it's going to be a brutal game. I reckon it's going to be gritty and brutal this Friday.
I'll take it any which way, but how I also want to mention Katoa again, who destroyed us when Melbourne came over. What a player, what a loss that guy has been. I mean, that try that he scored on the weekend, you know, there's not a rugby team or a league team on the planet that doesn't want that guy. The ability to run from 50 metres, stuff one in the face, turn a fullback around, and then still overpower the line. You know, I love watching him play, and more power to him. He's just gone and made himself a real life over there, hasn't he? Yeah.
I love the fact that, one, he was at a very young age coming in through the Warriors, and they were monitoring how they would use him and make sure that they don't put some time into his legs, being a young kid. But they always knew that this kid's got a massive motor. You know, that's something that you start with, a standard that's so high that he's got massive fitness. That's one of a few, actually. Their whole back, the new range of player, which we've got in the Warriors now, are very much that prototype. But I'm so grateful that he's gone over there and secured something, because he's a special player.
Isn't he?
Something that Melbourne do extremely well, don't they?
Yeah. And he's just improved. He's improved and improved. Look, how good is it to have it back, mate? There's so many talking points out there. There's so many great games. I mean, I don't know about you. I can't watch them all. I kind of got to pick and choose. And, you know, I've got other sport to watch over the weekend as well. But just having this sport, having this competition back. And every year, Rich, they say, oh, it gets bigger, it gets faster, it's fine. It's not a cliche. Just watch what you saw on the weekend.
Well, look what Pappenhausen did. Yeah. Well, these guys have been out for a long, long time, and he just stands out, right foot step, and he freaking accelerates. And like, you think he would have lost any speed? No, he gained speed. Yeah, and he just made it look so bloody good. And, you know, we didn't even talk about Jerome Hughes, the player of the year last year, and then you were just talking about Pappenhausen, how good he was. Munster. You know, like, that's a horrible spine to talk about.
Skilled players.
It's just horrible.
Haven't mentioned your old mob either getting pantsed either, mate. I'll leave that till last.
Well, you know, we had the Roosters that absolutely looked like crap.
Yeah.
Honest, you know, like, far out. Have I ever thought that the Roosters would ever go through a recycle phase, which they are, which I never thought that would ever happen.
I thought the resources of that club would never let this happen. I never thought with the wealth and the prestige that clubs, I never would thought that they would let those players go and not replace them.
People don't realise they're the most influential side in the Southern Hemisphere. There's a reason why.
Yeah, they live in the eastern suburbs, but they're in the bloody Vaucluse, for God's sake.
There it is. That's where it is. But you're right. The Sharks were like, I'm happy that they contested against a team that, can you believe it, Penrith, who have lost so many of their players, to then beat Sharks when they've acquired someone like Adam Fanua-Blake. Yeah. And you think everything's right. They've got a great spine with Kennedy, Trindle and Hines, and then Bailey, and they do it again.
Yeah, do it again.
They do it again.
That's called succession planning. There is the lesson for every single club, isn't it?
So wherever Gus Phil Gould goes, they win a comp. He was close to coming to the Warriors.
Yeah, he was.
He went to the Penrith, changed that around. He went to the Bulldogs. Look what's happening with them. Remember?
Yep.
And it's just like, he just does it well. Gus is incredible. His old saying, you remember when he used to coach us, and I don't know what he was saying because he's so intelligent. All of us would be looking at each other, go, what did he just say then? But he always used to say, you know, like, if you're going to beat someone, you got to meet him to beat him, and just so simple things that he used to say. But such an intelligent person. Boring podcast, I might add. Some of them, you listen to him, and he's sitting there, and Gus is gussing, he just sits there. But his IQ is incredible. Incredible.
Great having you on the show again, mate, and enjoying you on the telly as well. Always a pleasure, Richie. Thank you.
Bro. Appreciate you, mate.
This is the DSPN.